Who is the new Lady Whistledown? With the end of Season 4's whirlwind romance, we bore witness to only another whirlwind romance but the death and rebirth of Lady Whistledown. With Penelope now a Bridgerton, and with her identity as Little Whistledown aware to the public, the popular pamphlets being written by her had its days numbered. She is no longer a wallflower, but instead a powerful figure within British society whose word arguably had as much power and sway as British royalty, enough to in its early days greatly annoy Queen Charlotte. It is for this reason that I believe Penelope so greatly desired to lay down her pen, as with a flick of her quill she could annihilate a family standing in society. The weight of this power for a girl who originally just wanted a platform for her ignored voice to be heard clearly weighed too heavily upon her. However, in a way this outlet for Penelope's voice in the unmasking of her identity became a cage, where she was pressured by the very restraints of society that she would write about within her pamphlets. Which is why I believe so many were rejoiced for Penelope when she was finally permitted to put her pen down and retire Lady Whistledown. Yet, while Penelope may no longer be the pamphlet's writer, it appears, dear viewers, that another member of the ton has claimed this title for themselves. If, like me, you enjoy a tad bit of speculation on who would dare claim this position, then please follow along as we explore the new possible Lady Whistledown candidate, Eloise. The first contender, whose quill I frequently hear being accused of being the new Lady Whistledown, is none other than Eloise Bridgerton. Why she may be accused is of no surprise to any fan of the series. She is intelligent, wealthy, well-read, a wallflower in her own way, and the best friend to the original Lady Whistledown, Penelope. But are these really enough to solely link her to the new Whistledown? One other major factor as to why I believe many suspect Eloise is because, similar to her dear friend Penelope, Eloise is in a stage of her life where she feels unseen, where her voice and opinions are sealed due to her gender within society. There is only so much say, so much freedom she has as an unwed lady, or as an unmarried, childless spinster. But in anonymity, with the moniker of Lady Whistledown, and the sway this article has on the ton and on London society, this glass ceiling can be broken. This is why I believe so many speculate that Eloise has taken up this mantle, as in a lot of ways she appears to be the perfect candidate. However, if you were to ask me if I believe Eloise to be Lady Whistledown, well, dear viewers, that would have to be an unwavering no. Mainly due to the brief clip of Lady Whistledown's article and the tone of the writer's voice. I cannot view this being the tone or subject that Eloise would take this article. Eloise's voice is mature. Her desires are to make political changes for the advancement of disenfranchised groups, such as women and people of a lower class or standing. If Eloise truly was the new voice of Lady Whistledown, I truly do believe it wouldn't take her long to not only call out the wealthy men holding their power over the ton, but also the Queen and the misogynistic ideals behind dedicating one prospective lady as the season's diamond. She would delve into how such rigid perspectives of a woman's worth diminish who they are to merely their looks, ignoring any and all other factors of their being. Queen Charlotte. Now, one of the more unsuspecting contenders for the new author of Lady Whistledown would have to be none other than Queen Charlotte. As I imagine many of you are in a disagreement with this accusation, and while I may not wholeheartedly believe it myself, I will display arguments as to why this may or may not be the case. Within Season 5 of Bridgerton, perhaps more than any other season of Bridgerton, bar the Queen Charlotte spin-off, we learned how restrictive the role of Queen truly is within this world, as she may hold power over the upper echelons of society, such as members of her court and lesser nobles. Her sway over the common folk and the interactions they hold with those that orbit her realm of gossip seems to be lacking. However, as the new Lady Whistledown, this would all come to change. Queen Charlotte would no longer have to rely on her power as queen, but the accumulated knowledge of her subjects instead. And as mentioned within this season, the crown holds a small army of chambermaids, butlers, and staff that could be utilized to obtain all manner of gossip within the kingdom. Far more than Penelope could have ever dreamed to obtain. With this knowledge, Queen Queen Charlotte could truly enter a new form of joy within her mundane life, and gain a new sense of both purpose and power, as she would no longer have to consider the reactions of her words, as she would be hidden behind the Lady Whistledown alias. While some may be surprised, I believe there are many reasons as to why Queen Charlotte would take up this alias of Lady Whistledown. Yet while I believe there are reasons as to why she would do it, as to whether she did is another story entirely. I do not believe Queen Charlotte is a new Lady Whistledown purely because I think she would believe the role as a columnist is beneath her, and that it is the duty of her subjects to entertain her, not the other way around. Also, the new voice of Lady Whistledown comes across as quite young and inexperienced. While Queen Charlotte is useful in her mannerisms, inexperienced in the ways of society she is not. Francesca Sterling. The next contender who I will throw into this mix of quills responsible for the new Lady Whistledown's pamphlets is that of Francesca Sterling. Now Francesca is an interesting one, as I imagine very few if any suspect her as the new Lady Whistledown. The only real reason I believe someone may even suggest her in the first place, as she monopolizes a large amount of screen time within this season, and is suspected to be one of the main storylines for the next season of Bridgerton. But besides this, there is also the trauma that she has just endured as the passing of her husband has just occurred. Her life has been thrown upside down. She is rightfully emotional seeing the love that she has just fostered and hoped to explore for the rest of her life perish before her eyes, and has come to terms acknowledging that she has not fulfilled what many viewed as a vital role of women at this time, which was to produce an heir for the family. With her place in society in limbo, and her status constantly on the lips of others, it would be conceivable as to why she would desire to share her own opinions of the people that gossiped about her. Unlike many of the other Whistledown contenders, if Francesca were to do this, I believe this would come from a desire to channel the rage and the sadness that she is dealing with in her own life. It would be a means to vent her frustrations as to how society is treating a young widow and her desires to make them pay for their aggressions against her. However, do I believe Francesca is behind this new alias of Lady Whistledown? Well, dear viewers, no, I do not. I believe during this time, Francesca is barely coping with the internal sadness that she is dealing with, alongside the inevitable guilt of finding a new love, as well as the added factor of tackling homosexuality within this era and her feelings around the matter and her own self-awakening. To be frank, Francesca has far too much on her own plate to deal with the immense stress that comes with being Lady Whistledown. Michaela Sterling. The next contender for the possible new owner of the Lady Whistledown's quill is none other than Michaela Sterling. Similar to Francesca Sterling, Michaela is another interesting possibility, as both are going through such an immense loss and possibly possess pent-up anger, sadness and confusion for the loss of John Sterling. Because of this traumatic and sudden loss, I could envision Michaela, who appears to take no affront to her cousin's honour, sitting down, take up the quill of Lady Whistledown. In fact, I speculate that Michaela could be even more tempted to claim the power of Lady Whistledown's persona, as it may have been John protecting her desire to not be wed. Now that John is no longer there to stand between her and her family, the latter may take the opportunity to take control of her life and marry her to the highest bidder, or to a family friend. But through the power of Lady Whistledown, she could bring ruin to any family member or suitor who tries to force themselves upon her. Through this perspective, unlike many of the other suggestions, Michaela would be claiming the power of the quill for a completely unique circumstance. For Michaela, it would provide a means to protect herself in a society ruled by the whims of men. After all, if Bridgerton has shown anything, it's that not everyone can or will be as fortunate as the Bridgertons in having the opportunity to marry for love. And while what we've seen of Michaela's family, they do all seem friendly and accepting of her decision, I will note that we have not seen or been informed that we've seen her parents. The next part of this video somewhat lies in spoiler territory, so if you don't wish to be ruined, please exit here. In saying this, if we are to go by the books, Michaela and Francesca will be lovers at some point in the story. If this is the case, and the show explores a lesbian relationship within this era, this further explains Michaela's need not only for power, but for financial backing and independence, all things the title of Lady Whistledown can provide. Hyacinth Bridgerton. Now don't gasp all at once. I know many of you may be in disbelief that a Bridgerton so young in years could be responsible for such a large publication. But if Penelope Featherton taught us anything, it's that with allies and a bit of coin, what was once believed entirely out of reach could be easily attained. With her new discovery of the power of being unseen through dressing up as a maid, I believe Hyacinth would use this to infiltrate the secrets of the upper echelons of society. In events where she herself is unable to go undetected, I believe she would even bribe certain members of the help to assist her by granting them large sums of money for any juicy gossip that they are able to attain. Unlike some of the other contenders on this list, Hyacinth would not be taking up the quill of Lady Whistledown due to any forced circumstances, but more so out of a childish sense of enjoyment, the thrill of experiencing true power for the first time. It is for this reason that I believe she would quickly grow in over her head, not realizing how dangerous her gossip can be, and possibly even leading her to gravely harm someone either near to her or entirely innocent of the rumors she is spreading. Yet while I do believe Hyacinth as Lady Whistledown would inevitably end up doing more harm than good, I do believe she would still lead by her own sense of justice that she may have been inspired by watching her big sister Eloise. Hyacinth would not stand for any injustice carried out within the town, going unspoken of, without bringing it to the forefront for everyone's gaze. By these speculations, if you cannot tell by now, I would clearly state that Hyacinth is one of my biggest contenders for the next Lady Whistledown. She possesses the childish demeanour that was portrayed in the newly released copy of Lady Whistledown, but also possesses the financial means and intelligence to pull such an immense task off. The only real halt within this theory is how she would obtain the means to acquire a company to anonymously print and press the document. As unlike Penelope, Hyacinth is not a wallflower and comes from an incredibly loving family with a mother that will be paying attention to her single unwed young daughter. Even if Violet Bridgerton is exploring the new pleasures that come with watering her own garden, I refuse to believe she would neglect the growth of her young children, especially with their ascent into society. The only way around this, from what I can see, is if Hyacinth were not alone and perhaps relied on one of her staff of the Bridgerton estate to carry out most of the messy work. Miss Posy Lee. The next contender we will speculate on claiming the quill for the new Lady Whistledown is none other than the recently introduced Posy Lee. While some may instantly scoff at the notion, there are some aspects of this character that would indeed make sense of her to position herself as the next Lady Whistledown. First and foremost is her similarity to the former Lady Whistledown, Penelope Featherton. Both lived in families where they were undervalued in comparison to their sisters and in some way ignored by their mothers. While this has arguably affected Penelope more so than Posy, we can still see that Posy was largely ignored in favour of pursuing her sister's future marital perspectives. Some examples of this can be seen in her ability to sneak out of her mother's home, unchaperoned no less, to warn Sophie of her mother's heinous plot to ruin her happiness. In this same thought process, while not quite a wallflower, Posy, when in her insecure state, did possess the ability to fade into the background, which is a must-needed quality for any Lady Whistledown contender. And now that her family's name has been tarnished and her mother's awful nature displayed to the ton, Posy also has been shown to desire some form of freedom from her familial ties. To achieve this as a woman during these times was hard, as often the only acceptable means to accomplish this is through marriage. But truly, as displayed via Penelope, it is not marriage that grants the freedom, but a steady income that allows one to stand on their own. For Posy, this could be achieved if she were to reap similar financial benefits for the news pamphlet as Penelope once did. However, if you were to ask me if Miss Posy Lee were to be the next Lady Whistledown, in all honesty, I would be somewhat perplexed, as she was not initially who I had in mind. But after doing some research into the video and noticing all the comparisons she possesses with Penelope, it really did raise my suspicions as to whether she could be the next Lady Whistledown. Of course, there would come some issues with distributing the pamphlets and raising the funds to pay workers before she received any benefits from producing the pamphlets, but still we have seen that Posy is quite intelligent. There is no doubt in my mind that she would discover a means to produce the pamphlets if she truly desired to. And in terms of receiving the funds, well, Miss Posy was also shown that she is not above pinching profitable items from the rich if she believes it will go to a worthy cause. Mrs. Alice Mondridge. The next contender for the moniker of Lady Whistledown is none other than Mrs. Alice Mondridge. Alice Mondridge is quite a unique candidate as her importance within the series has bloomed almost exponentially so. From her humble beginnings as the wife of a successful boxer and entrepreneur, to joining high society, and now as a hand and potentially right hand to the Queen. Throughout the entire cast, including that of the Bridgertons, no one has grown in status and power as quickly as her. And with such growth, naturally comes connections. Not only to high society, but to the working class that she once stood beside, that she acknowledges as human beings, that she truly sees as people as she can see herself within them. This unique position could provide Alice with a network of staff throughout many houses to inform her of any and all juicy gossip that they may have come across and provide them with a suitable conversation for this news. Not to mention that her own position besides the Queen allows her insight into news far earlier than most other members of upper society. I believe what may inspire Alice to take up this moniker could also be the injustices she witnesses while in the castle, and how mistreated the working class truly is. She may come to the realization that she is in a position of power, but not utilizing it to help the people that she most relates to. While she would not desire for her actions to directly harm the standing of her family, which would prevent her from making any outright comments to disparage any other high-standing family, she may realize that her opinions do not need to come directly from her. It is here where she will re-establish Lady Whistledown. That is even more likely, as while working besides the Queen, her beliefs and morals will be put to the side, as the Queen's opinions or desires are prioritized, no matter how much this may harm the people around her. So to sum it all up, Alice could obtain a web of information to enlighten her of any gossip that occurs within the town, has connections to the working class, and can obtain a means to mass produce the pamphlets, and has a high enough standing in society to fund this endeavour. While not at first someone that one would expect to take this moniker, there are many plausible reasons as to why she would. The only real point of contention is the voice that we've heard of the new Lady Whistledown. It sounded more youthful and a bit inexperienced in the ways of life, which Alice is not. She is smart and cunning because she did not grow up in the cushy society of the town. Although perhaps writing in this manner is new to her and she is still finding her footing. Lady Danbury. The next contender for the moniker of Lady Whistledown is none other than our much beloved Lady Danbury. Now I am quite aware that this is somewhat of a reach due to her fierce loyalty to the Queen and her desire to travel. But Lady Danbury did promise that it was not a permanent goodbye. Unlike many other contenders on this list, Lady Danbury is one of the few who would easily obtain gossip within the town, as her reach is far spread. Which most definitely stems from necessity. As the right hand of the crown, she always had to be a step ahead of any foul intentions that could be spread to harm the Queen. And while she may not have known who the original Lady Whistledown was for some time, she was always prepared for whatever trouble the pamphlets may bring. In regards to reasons why she would pick up the moniker of Lady Whistledown, that would be quite perplexing. Mainly due to, as previously said, her loyalty and deep friendship with Queen Charlotte. She has also become quite used to her friend's attitude and tantrums, so unlike other contenders on the list, is far less likely to take up the position of Lady Whistledown due to some hatred towards the crown. Instead, I could envision two reasons Lady Danbury may take up this position. The first being to return some form of joy and excitement to Queen Charlotte's life, as the pamphlets provided a distraction from King George's poor health, and gave the Queen something else in her life to live for. And secondly, I could see Lady Danbury using Lady Whistledown to accomplish some good within the town, and achieve real change within this British society. She has lived a long life and understands enough to know how society could be open to changing, while also comprehending where to avoid critiquing, as the punishment from the crown could lead to more harm than good. However, if one were to sincerely ask me if I honestly believe Lady Danbury were behind the new pamphlets, I would have to say no. In my opinion, in this new stage within her life, Lady Danbury wants a break from the town and up society, and wishes to explore her homeland and the world. She knows that there is far more to life than simply what occurs within English society, and she is ready to experience this for herself. Alfie. The next contender for the moniker of Lady Whistledown is none other than Alfie. Now this is a most certainly far-fetched, as above everything he would lack the funds to start the process of mass producing pamphlets. But say he did manage to bypass this. Whether through some ambiguous loan, newfound fortune, or theft, then a servant such as himself would be in the perfect position to gather gossip. As a servant, more precisely a footman, he has ample access to the privileged lives of high society, and with that the secrets that they may try to hide. Since he was a footman, he may also have been permitted access to areas where only men may reside, which would provide a whole new wealth of gossip for him to draw upon. And as a servant, and more particularly a man, in this instance I believe he would also be the last individual that anyone would expect to be Lady Whistledown. Yet while a servant would make the perfect sense for the new owner of the Lady Whistledown quill, there are many barriers that they would face before they could obtain this title. Besides the previously stated funds to start this endeavour, there is also the matter of education. Many servants were not well educated and certainly could not read. While Alfie is one of the exceptions to this rule, if he was even caught writing down a single private word of the Lord or Lady of the house, the consequences would be severe, which brings us to the issues of privacy and time. Servants frequently lacked both the privacy to express these thoughts and the time required to find a means to mass produce and print Lady Whistledown documents. Simply put, his job would consume much of his time, as it is his livelihood, and the only thing supporting himself and his family. Most servants would never risk this, as without their income, their families could be ruined, and their prospects of finding work in another household would most likely be incredibly low. So if one were to sincerely ask me whether Alfie could be the next Lady Whistledown, my answer, as simply put, would be no, or at least not alone. You see, someone not of high society in truth would require assistance to pull off this production of Lady Whistledown, and I believe that help would have to come from someone within high society. No matter how capable Alfie may be, there will be spaces and nuances that I truly do believe he would not entirely relate to or understand, as the rules of this class, in this manner, do not apply to him. He is simply put too far removed and subject to entire different rules for the part of society that he falls within. Hazel. The next contender for the moniker of Lady Whistledown is none other than Hazel. Similar to our previous contender for Lady Whistledown, Alfie, Hazel is a maid and both suffers and benefits in terms of her perspectives for being Lady Whistledown. However, the one difference being the anonymity in terms of where her family resides, as she presently only works at the Bridgerton household due to Sophie's and Benedict's kindness. While she is still in contact with them, she does not present the immediate danger of having a family member out her for being Lady Whistledown, if the Queen were to present an award for finding the new writer of the Whistledown pamphlets. Yet one must accept the realization that as a maid her job would consume much of her time, and hence severely impact her ability to sneak around and gather the required gossip to produce the Lady Whistledown pamphlets. While she could work with other maids to gather the required gossip, this could hinder her also, as they may suspect her as the new Lady Whistledown. As a maid, there is also the matter of education, as I believe it is not implicitly stated how educated Hazel is, and I believe she was quite impressed with Sophie's education, meaning it most likely far surpassed her own. If she indeed is not literate, this would place a whole other issue for documenting the gossip required to write the Whistledown pamphlets, and would require telling a literate individual of her identity, as Lady Whistledown, to annotate each secret. But if she is literate, then we are posed with a separate issue, as if she is caught writing down the secrets she hears within the Bridgerton estate, then she would most likely lose her job and the ability to work in any neighbouring estate. A job, I might add, that she is in desperate need of, as she was previously willing to work for an indignant family in order to earn enough to support her own family. However, in saying all of this, if one were to ask me if I believe Hazel were to be the new Lady Whistledown, I would provide the same answer as I did for Alfie, which was a resound no. At least not alone. I say this as while servants and maids go unseen by high society, they are also restricted to the areas where they are supposed to be working. If they are constantly seen in areas where they are not meant to reside in, or even worse, noticed eavesdropping, then they will be severely punished, if not fired, or even worse, imprisoned. Furthermore, there is the matter of the fact that they reside in a completely different social class with its own faux pas that may not necessarily exist or directly translate to the upper society, which means there may be certain nuances that a servant or maid may not register the severity of to write in a Whistledown pamphlet. But dear viewers, this is only my humble speculation, and I am sure many of you will agree or disagree with my perspectives. If you are so inclined, please leave a comment, like, share, and if you are ever so kind, subscribe.